Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this conversation. I'm Harry McKinley. I'm the managing editor at Mix Interiors, which is a commercial interior design publication based in the UK, but distributed across Europe. Now, before we dive into conversation, I want to ask a question of the audience. Please raise your hand if you have stayed in a 25 hours hotel.
Nobody.
There are a few hands, but actually it's a great opportunity because what better time than now to do a deep dive on 25 hours hotels. So no one will do a better job of introducing the panelists than themselves. So if we take it down the line, just introduce yourself to the audience, but also, seeing as we're here at Hotel Experience, I thought maybe in just a line or two, if you can tell us what for you makes for a great hotel experience. Wow. Melita, why don't we start with you?
I guess if you have a little bit of a good memory, you remember that I'm Melita Skamounaki, and I'm the co-founder of Double Decker, a curating studio based in Soho in London. And what was the question?
What makes a great hotel experience?
A great hotel experience is always connected to the artwork. No,
a project we worked on.
No, a great hotel experience is a hotel that, it makes you feel comfortable, it makes you feel like you're at home and that you can enjoy leisure and you work also, and you kind of flow nicely in the space. That's how I feel.
Willem, they all know who you are, but what about a great hotel experience?
Okay, so a great experience for me is that you enjoy, that you be yourself, everything is flawless, and that you maybe also can forget about what has been going on in the past, so you just be yourself and somebody really cares for you.
Fantastic. Christoph?
Very simple, great atmosphere, warm atmosphere, inspiring, it shouldn't be boring. Good food, good wine, good drinks, that's also important. I like to feel welcomed, and that's a bit more difficult. I would like to be with guests who are no idiots, but interesting.
So good atmosphere and good booze, where do I check in? Werner, what about you? Great hotel experience.
Yeah, even if we design new places, I like or love classics. Places that have always been there, run by families like these. If they come from the 70s or even if they are 100 years old, I like these kind of permanent long runners.
Mm-hmm. Paula?
Well, I like a place that are connected with the city or the area where I am. I don't want to take a sleeping pills and wake up the next day. You don't know if you are in beautiful environment, but you don't know if you are in Berlin or in Switzerland or in Rome. So connection with a place is important for me. Coffee machine in the room, vital. And then I agree with Christoph, good food, good wine.
Fantastic.
And gin and tonic.
Yes.
There's a theme here, but Christoph, 25 hours hotels is, of course, your baby. So why don't we take it back to the very beginning and tell us what motivated you to start the group? What did you want it to be?
The motivation was actually, I was a bit under pressure because I decided at some point to get self-employed, and it took very long, and at some point I realized I need to do something, otherwise I'll run out of money. And so that was one motivation, but the real motivation was freedom in being an entrepreneur, and I was always in love with hotels. So that was some of the drivers. And I wanted to bring people together because I knew early that I need a lot of people in order to do something nice, because I myself don't know a lot. So yeah, this was the inspiration. And while I was sitting here, I remembered all of a sudden one claim. In the very beginning, we were very much about claims, and I did the first brochure, and one of the claims was from Astrid Lindgren. She's a Swedish writer, Karlsson from the Roof, and he has one claim. It said, it has to bang properly, and I want to have it fun, otherwise I won't take part of it. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the claims I always wanted to push for, because I think hospitality has to be fun. It's not like, developing office buildings.
Mm-hmm. To go back to that point about what you wanted it to be, what was missing in the world of hotels that you wanted to bring? What was the gap you wanted to plug?
Well, actually, I don't think there was so much missing. If you look back and look at it globally, we started in the German-speaking cities, so maybe there was a little bit of a lack of very individual hotels, not in the luxury segment, but still inspiring. You had like individual single hotels, such as in Munich, the Cortina, or some other properties, but there was no such thing as a brand which was able to also scale itself with its individuality. I think I only realized afterwards when we started, we didn't have a big strategy or a big plan. We just had one hotel in Frankfurt and we wanted to make it nice.
Yeah. What didn't you want it to be?
Well, there were a lot of things. Maybe one more thing about what we want. We are very idle people. We love to be, we love to create things where we are proud of. Like when I say we, it was my 3 shareholders plus more and more the team which I developed. And we wanted to, like Werner said earlier, we got very much inspired, or especially me, by the legendary grand hotels with the natural story and everything. So that was a little bit of the base, but we couldn't afford to build like a legendary grand hotel on Hanauer Landstraße in Frankfurt on a shitty road. So we had to compromise. Yeah. What we didn't want was a breakfast room, for example. We didn't want to standardize. We still hate standards. We wanted to individualize, which is not that easy anymore. We didn't want to have hotel restaurants because they usually are dead boring and empty, especially when you come to a corporate place. So these are the didn't ones next to many others.
Yeah. So all of the creators here on the panel are working with 25 Hours Hotels. We're going to get into the specifics of some of the projects a bit later in the conversation. But to kick us off, how do each of you think that 25 Hours Hotels broke the mold in some way? How did it shatter the conventions of what a hotel is or could be? What do you think, Philip?
So you're looking at me. I think it's originality. So it's super original. I mean, I remember the first time I visited 25 Hour Hotel, in my experience in Berlin, I was like, wow. And that, I think, leaves an impression. And then from there, you own it and you can build it up.
Do you agree with that, Melita?
I do agree, and I think I remember that I said, I said to myself when I first also went to Berlin to the Bikini Hotel, that luxury doesn't have to be gold. Luxury is when you can have a really good bike and you can cycle in the city, or if you can, they remember what kind of tea you have, or you have a nice bag and you can take it with you and go around the city, and that's luxury for me. It doesn't have to have a huge chandelier, which is also good, but it's a different story.
Werner, how did 25 Hours break the mold?
I think Christoph found a new slot that was not there before in the market. I would say that there's this kind of experience-orientated, very, kind of impressive spaces. I mean, I see it as a designer and architect. I think people didn't do this, or brands didn't do this. And every project is kind of creating a new type of brand place. It's not a rollout system. There's no brand booklet and then rollout. Every project is new. Every project is done with a long discussion among us, among the creative and Christoph's team. So it's a different way of working. It's a more intense way of understanding where you are in the city, what neighborhood, involving other projects, other people, artists. I would say that the evolution of a project of 25 Hours is a very kind of different one. It's a very complex one, but also a funny, and it's a journey.
Yeah. Paula, what do you think? How did it break the mold in some way, shatter conventions of what hotel design?
What I like in 25, in our relationship also, is that every project is one-off. And that's fit very well in my way to work, what I like to do. Every project, I think, has to be different from another. I don't like to rubber stamp Paula everywhere, the same bathroom, the same canapé, whatever. So this is the first important and good things for us. Also, I try to keep a little percent of fun in all the project, and from 24 hours was very nice because they didn't cut that exercise, so was good. And I like the idea to have a story which fit in this approach. I did this project in Florence, and they really had a story for me to develop. It was a little bit difficult in the beginning. Coming to Italy, in Florence, people are a little bit nasty. German guy want to open a hotel with a Divina Commedia theme. So I was very scared in the beginning. How can I protect this man from those very aggressive Florentine intellectuals? So I decided to choose the most simple and banal item that are in the Divina Commedia and work on this. And at the end of the story, the result is nice.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more actually about...
In Christoph, they never say no. And at the end, I start to stop him because whatever we discuss, he like. And at this end, and he won't. He's like a child. He wants everything and the opposite of everything. So normally I need to push people. In this case, I was trying to say, okay, never mind.
Well, we'll talk a bit more about Florence in perhaps even more detail later. Speaking of one-offs, by the way, I don't think either of us imagined there would be someone else on the panel with orange shoes. But if you land on the website for 25 Hours Hotels, you're greeted with the words, a 25 Hours Hotel in every cool city. Now, some might say it doesn't get cooler than Berlin, which of course you worked on, Werner. So if you can tell us a little bit about that project, how you made it a good fit for 25 Hours Hotels.
I mean, Berlin, we started, it was an early stage of the brand, and I would say it was a close collaboration between us, and the building is good. It was also about reactivating the old Western city. You know, Berlin is kind of reunited, and everybody's running to the center in the east, like Mitte. So it was also a bit of a risk to come back to the former West Berlin center. And the budget was limited, but we wanted to be rough, which was okay for the budget. So we wanted to be rough as Berlin is rough, and we wanted to involve as many artists and creative people that we know or we connected to them. So I would say that this was a lucky punch in a stage. Everything was coming together in a way that it ended up in an astonishing place. That was Berlin, but it connected also the tourists or the guests to the city. So I think the worst in a hotel is that you don't feel where you are or you're not connected to the vibe of the city. And I think the 25 Hours Bikini is a place you feel you are in Berlin, and it has a Berlin vibe. And that's maybe the most attractive thing. I don't know. Christoph can say maybe more.
Well, I think, 25 Hours Hotel was there first, but now this idea, in all the marketing spiel, I get a lot of it as a journalist, which says, oh, we have a connection to the location. But sometimes, it doesn't, by extension, let us know exactly what that is. So is it possible to tell us a little bit more about the specifics of the design story? When you say it connects to place, how does that manifest in the real world? What does that mean in terms of the design of the hotel and its environment?
Berlin is a good example, perhaps, because first of all, it was early stage, so we were also we're still learning, but it was the very beginning of our learning curve. And Werner was, and that's what we love, a challenging sparring partner. He is, like Paola, none of those people who is always saying yes to what we find okay. He's really challenging us, and that's good. But the most important thing I've learned through Berlin, and I think that was a little bit of a back and forth, we learned to be we didn't want to have that one famous designer named Werner Eislinger who does just like a design hotel. We wanted to play ping pong from the beginning, like we did with you, Paola. And part of the ping pong which we learned in Berlin was that Werner, who's very well connected in Berlin, and we are a little less well connected, but we brought a lot of different people together, and that we called it the collective, which kind of fits very well to Berlin and to the anarchistic approach which we had. We had so many people being involved in the project that a lot of things happened. There was an additional impulse by all the people being involved, and I think giving that freedom to the project, especially by the designer, is very useful and helpful. And that's what I've learned, and that's what we are trying to implement in the future projects as much as possible.
And so how is that realized in the design in terms of when you say we connected to Berlin? What does that look like? What does that mean?
The whole third floor?
Yeah, we gave
you
slots
remember?
to other designers, and there was a fashion team from Paris and Berlin. We said, okay, you get this corner, do whatever you want, what is in the budget possible. And we had artists like Yoshi, a Japanese artist living in Barcelona. He was kind of making kind of illustrations on all walls all over the hotel. He was there for 3 months, and he was just making his kind of sketches on all the walls. So we brought in several artists from Berlin or from outside Berlin, illustrators, musicians, also artists. There was a robot walking around along the wall in the bar. I think it didn't work forever, but it was like a drawing robot or like an artist robot. So we brought in this kind of lab world from Berlin. Berlin is always a place where things happen, but not very professional, but there's a lot of kind of research done. And so this was like an example of what we did.
Well,
Just very quickly to add on this, in an ideal world, we combine what Werner said with a concept, with content, with we ideally don't want to make useless things. We want to combine it with corners which have a special purpose for the operation, for the experience, for the inspiration. So if we can manage to do this, that would be then the perfect thing.
And in a city like Berlin, there's a lot of cool to plug into there. I don't want to offend anyone. Does anyone here live in Zurich? No. Zurich, maybe not considered quite so cool, sorry. you made it cool. Dubai. No one from Dubai. Dubai, again, maybe not so cool. So for those that have worked on projects in those cities, how do you create a vibe that feels cool when, unlike Berlin, you maybe don't have so much material to work with originally?
I think when we talk about art, I mean, that's where we were working very closely together with Christoph. Our first aim for Dubai was, let's find the grit. Mm-hmm. You know, where is something a little bit unpolished? Where is originality? And that's how we started the research. We forgot about the glitzy building, and we went really back to basics. We went to old places where you would not imagine that this is a Dubai. And then suddenly, actually, it became really cool.
Yeah. Florence, for example, beautiful city. Cool? I don't know. So why don't we go back to that project? How did you bring in some of the spirit of 25 Hours Hotel, that slightly disruptive, edgy vibe that might not be really native to the city, but it's inherent in this hotel brand?
Florence is so beautiful and can be not so cool sometimes. But we start with a beautiful building, and the project build some experience inside the building. Some of them were more related to Florence, to the tradition, to the place, some other less. And the approach was a little bit to make this Divina Commedia somehow acceptable and nice. The approach was a little bit ironic. So probably the combination between kind of side look of the Divina Commedia and the theatrical setup made the recipe working. Also, was the first time, and that's his Christoph idea, he liked that very often I mix in my project very cool design, but also junk, also furniture that already had one life before, and then I tried to paint, fix, and give a new chance to have a second life. So, but I never did it in such a big project. When I just say he wants everything, when he saw this, he said, okay, half of the FF&E has to be vintage. So I was very happy, but I'm near to suicide myself, because it was really not easy. Also from the logistic point of view, you know. You buy something with price, and it's not what you are going to see at the end, because you need to clean, you need to fix, you need to transport. So at the end of the story, not 50%, because it was unrealistic, but I did the biggest vintage project in my life. No more. That's done.
And what about something like Zurich then as well? Because you're trying to bring something that maybe the city hasn't seen before. Storytelling is such an integral part of 25 Hours Hotels, but how do you tell a new story when you go into a city, something we haven't seen before?
Well, Zurich, the story was a bit, I would say, Werner, you have to help me, but to me, sometimes a bit too intellectual. I sometimes didn't understand it myself. It was very much driven by you. It was, we started with the claim pocket universe, because Zurich's original claim from tourism was little big city, because it's a very small city, but on the other hand, it's very big. And we are in a neighborhood which is very colorful. It's like a red light district where you have that pocket universe. And I more and more like the name. And I think out of this intellectual approach, I think a lot of interesting things appeared. And my favorite still are two things at the hotel. Number one is the reception, which became a pawn shop. So people were able and are still able to trade on certain days of the week items from home, which they can give to us, and they get a room for free for one night. I mean, we do it on Sunday evenings when it's not fully full occupancy, and the whole vitrine of the reception became like a trading shop of people who brought their watches. I always made fun by saying they can bring us the Rolex and they can stay for one night. We still don't have a Rolex though, but it's a nice story which you can continue. And then again, collaborations. There's a very famous bag producer called Freitag in Zurich. It's like known all over the world. It's made of the canvas of vans, old trucks, and Werner built a whole tree out of it. And it resembles a little bit what Marlene Dietrich did in Berlin by saying, I always want to keep a piece of luggage in Berlin so that she can always come back. So we are referring to those stories, and it turned out to be a really colorful hotel. We have like a porn tiles, not porn, but porn tiles made by a very famous artist. So if you look closer, you can see very interesting scenes behind the bar, and you have to detect it first. So it's like a lot to find, right? But
Yeah, I would say this kind of intellectual part of the project, it's not visible for the guest. The guest is just coming, checking in and having a look. It's more for us, this kind of red line. I mean, Zurich took 7 years from day one until the opening. So it was a long project. Okay, Swiss are always precise, but things take long. So it was a long project, but we needed a red line for us, what we want to do and where we want to go. But it's mostly this kind of, it's mostly for us a storyline, I would say, that it's, okay, when you enter the place and you have this lighthouse logo above the counter, you understand there's something going on, and maybe you start to talk to the reception people. But the rest is just experience. I think it's full of experience, this place. And yeah, local artists, we brought them artists. It's again, there's a famous printing house being involved apart from Taschen, from Zurich. So it's again a mix match that maybe feels a bit wild and chaotic, but when you're there, you understand, and you understand the feeling, and you're getting into it.
Please tell me there's a picture of the porn tiles somewhere. That I think people
And
would
when
be
you make a
interested to
snapshot with
see.
your camera and you condense it, you see that it's a pornographic picture, but you don't see it when it's the tiles on the lights on the left side of the picture. So when you see the tiles, you just see tiles.
Actually, I was told that Madonna also has the same tiles. It's an artist from Germany called Tobias Rehberger, and it seems to be quite collective, and it was very expensive.
Yeah. So Dubai then, I am going to go out on a limb and imagine there probably aren't porn tiles in that one, but
We've tried.
Yeah, we have some hints with, that you can discover different layers of what you wouldn't expect to see in Dubai.
Well,
with
that's
the
it.
photographer we worked with also.
The unexpected, I think, because you mentioned before about wanting to surprise people with a different type of narrative. You didn't go down the luxury route, you didn't go down the polished route. So again, what does that mean in practice? So the actual design, how did you go about sourcing interesting artists? What was the narrative that you wanted to build with that project?
I think in the beginning in Dubai, because they expected is something more luxe and more gold, it becomes the challenge. At the beginning, the challenge is bigger, but it ends up being easier in the end, because once you start discovering these people and you discover the art scene, one brings the other. They all know each other, and then you start having meetings with them. You try to inspire them. You give them brief. You go back to Christophe. You explain what all these people are, and then he gives you more fuel. So at the beginning, it's more difficult to crack it, but once you're in, the artists can be very interesting. So we found people who lived abroad, people who have gone there back, and they live in Dubai. They grew up there. They have a nice community, and we work there, of course, with good written briefs and with a lot of creative fuel that comes from the brand anyway. We managed to have a collection that is quite unexpected.
Yeah, and what was really nice, I think, what we realized also from the artists, they were very, very keen also to give something different. They said, okay, we are Dubai, we are not boring. Let us show you what we can do. And everybody really pushed the boundaries, and I think that was quite rewarding.
So, emerging artists, porn tiles, vintage collected items. These are all quite different stories. So where is the commonality? How does all of this sit comfortably under the umbrella of 25 Hours Hotels? How do you develop an interesting design story that tells a unique story, but also feels somehow connected to this wider family of properties?
May I quickly? I mean, first of all, there's no common denominator on the design. This is what Paula said in the very beginning. We try to start from scratch again, all over. Every project we start, we want to be different. Of course, if we do another project with Paula or one with Studio Eislinger, you will feel the Paula touch and the Otto touch, the Studio Eislinger touch. But the common denominator from a brand perspective, we've created slowly but surely more through operations, through culture, the corporate culture, which has grown at some point. And I think there's a strong connection. By the way, this is a very important picture for Dubai, which has been done by you guys. We have to talk about it quickly later, because design, and maybe that's something where I can link to, design, if properly done, and Dubai is a good example. We have a very large lobby, and it turned out, and that was always our hope, it turned out to be to become the community space in Dubai of a really interesting crowd of people. And it's not so much anymore about the design, but at the end of the day, it's something which has been created together, and design, or in this case, art consulting or art collection, is a very important piece. And that one picture shows a very, very large ceiling of a piece of art which shows the connection of the whole world of people, and that's so interesting. But coming back to the cultural part, the corporate culture, I think these are the aspects where you should feel more the DNA of the brand.
Did each of you feel that in coming?
Sorry, no. One thing we forgot to say, that in Florence, at the end of the story, a lot of people come, local people come in the hotel to have a dinner, to stay, to spend the afternoon. This is very rare in Florence because normally there is this kind of barrier. Hotel is for guests, foreigner, and somehow the recipe was working and was interesting and make this area cool enough to attract local people. That was not that was our dream, but was not so sure. That
One of the things that people in the audience might find interesting is you mentioned at the very beginning, you're not really interested in having just the star name and the hotel be built on that. So how do you go about choosing the creative talents that you work with on these projects?
I mean, Paola, I met, Werner, you've been in touch with one of my colleagues and you were well known already in Berlin. But Paola, I think I read about you in a very...
No, we met million of years ago in
Zurich.
Switzerland.
Yes, I know, but that's why...
Then we...
Yeah. But I read about, and I was, I would be so proud if I could ever work with someone like Paola Navone or Werner Eislinger, and we just approached you and asked you, and then we met, and I think we liked each other. That's super important. If we would never work with anybody, and I think vice versa, who we don't have a good relationship with, because again, I think it only works if you have fun and if you want to spend time with each other. But there was no strategy behind, really. In the very beginning, we said we only do every hotel with a new designer. So ideally, we would have for every hotel another designer, but at some point you create a relationship and then you also appreciate the fact that Werner knows how to do a 25-hour hotel, or Paola. So we have a small group of favorite partners who we try to convince to do new hotels with us.
So maybe Christoph is open to pitches, just saying.
Sure.
Do you always agree? And if not, who wins?
No, I think we like not the fights, but we like to have controversial discussions. That's very important. I hope I'm still humble about the professionality of the designer, of Paola and Werner and Melita and Willem, because I don't know much about design, and it's not about design. I think ideally our role as the operators, as the brand, is to bring in the concept and then leave the design to the designers. If we get too much involved in how the chair looks like or what kind of color we should choose, then I think it gets critical. We get heavily involved when it comes to atmosphere. We want to have the right light situation, and Paola, we had a lot of discussions because I learned through Paola that in Italy light is in a different way, and that you can be very tasteful also with light sources which are not always the very, very warm, cozy ones, but it's about communicating with each other. So
Do you agree with that, Werner?
Sorry.
I just want to say one thing that Christoph said in the very beginning of our collaboration. Go ahead, as long as it's a hotel from an operational point of view. It was very liberal, very free. So he gave us a lot of creative freedom, which is not normal, I would say. But that's also, I would say, it's a specialty working with you, that you trust creative people and you give a kind of I wouldn't say a carte blanche completely, and you learn about the operations of 25 hours through the project. So, but it's a very, I say, easygoing liberal system that creates these spaces.
Was it the same experience?
Sorry. It's very important for us that they gave us a lot of input in operation. Sometimes you deal with a counterpart, you do your job, and then when people start to take over and they need to work, the situation is not friendly enough, is not efficient enough. So very important to learn all the operation need, because we can find solution, we can find also creative solution, but if we don't really know what they need to make money, to work in a good way, and all personnel has to be happy. And what is very funny in Florence, there is a kind of band of people so nice and happy. They play around the whole day, and they are very nice, and they are still saying, we are very happy to be here, and so on and so forth. So this, for us, was important to, then, okay, we are free. He's a little bit stubborn sometimes. We are free, maybe sometimes too free, because you talk too much, and whatever you say after Christoph wants, so you have to learn how to talk less, a little bit.
Yeah. Well, these are all existing projects, and I want to make sure that we have time to talk a little bit about the future. So 25 Hours Hotels is pushing more into the Middle East, for example, with the likes of NEOM, which I know is very exciting for a lot of people in the design sphere. So can you tell us a little bit more about what a hotel with individuality looks like in that context?
Well, NEOM we do together, Studio Eislinger, and it's very exciting. It's very artificial, so it's actually the opposite of what we always have claimed by being very analog and very down to earth. Of course, it's the perfection of artificial hotels, and we took that approach, and we created a story which is based on science and fiction. And also here we have a lot of funny discussions, because I want to be very, in Germany we say plakativ, bold on the story. And we took movies, the old, famous movies from Blade Runner all the way to Metropolis, and we are trying to implement it as much as possible. So it looks like a futuristic place, and it's going to be one. And I think it's also something interesting, because it's not only design and operation, it's also technology and IT. How much can we implement from the people who support us on the technology level? Because I would love to have guests experiencing a hotel which is very much driven by, I don't know, AI, by things which you don't know about nowadays. Yeah. Do we still need to have a TV in the room, or is it a total new experience when it comes to entertainment in this respect?
Well, it's very interesting that in a way what we're talking about is really the cusp of where hospitality is going. Working on that project, Werner, how much is there a sense of how the modern traveler has changed and how you're catering to that in some way? What does it take to keep a brand like 25 Hours Hotels fresh and disruptive now that it's been around for a while and there's a lot more competition?
That's also a challenge about this NEOM project. I mean, on the one hand, it's 25 Hours first resort project. It's a 30,000 square meter hotel, so it's large. We have wellness, spa areas, and a big pool. So it's also a bit of a different, it's not a city hotel anymore. On the other hand, NEOM expects that it's about the future, but we see it more ironic, and but that's a bit of a, we have to deal with it, because, okay, NEOM is the proclamation of the, whatever the future is, the future, and yeah, we are a bit, I think, discussing, is it also about vintage or not? But we bring in all these older movies, and so we bring in let's say, the styling will be also kind of related to the former idea of or the utopian ideas from, we know mostly from movies. So it's a bit of a, it's a complicated thing, because NEOM itself is very pushy in this kind of, we are tomorrow. And what is 25 Hours in this kind of world? I mean, it's complicated, and it's a process.
What do you think? You guys don't like to do things by half measures, and you certainly don't like to do things that are boring. So what does it take to keep a brand like 25 Hours fresh and disruptive through the interventions that you both work on with the projects?
I guess not to repeat what another location has done. You know, when we did Dubai, we traveled with Christoph to different 25 Hours. You know, we went to a couple of them. We listened to his vision and everything, but we didn't copy anything. We went through the core, and we went straight to the core and tried to find a new narrative.
That's what I'm always saying. You need to be original and not having a me too. And being with a brand like that, we always say this is original. We have to be original.
Yeah. Christoph, I want to finish with you just in the last few seconds that we have, but it's almost 20 years now of this brand. So what's the greatest lesson you've learned along the way, and what do you wish you'd known?
Oh, oh shit. I don't know, to stay curious and open-minded, to try to really reinvent yourself and also what we are doing. I think we should be very careful that we are not happy about what has been done for the last 20 years. We should look into the future because the future will be very different from what we have done, and I think that's super important. And I would like to be a bit more organized, or our company, when it comes to certain, infrastructures. We've done so many mistakes too many times that we should be better organized to make mistakes only once or twice and then learn out of it when it comes to building the hotel also. But this is more like I think the first part is important to be able to reinvent yourself.
Yeah, stay curious. That's a great lesson to leave things on. So we're out of time. Please join me in saying a huge thank you to our...
Bye-bye. Thank you.